Today we're going to put the wood on in part 2 video of assembling a shed kit. Before we get started, let's take a look at the tools that we'll be using. They're needed to do this. You need a saw to cut your plywood, of course, tape measure to measure it, pencil for marking it, the C-clamp pliers. Vice grip pliers work really good for holding the plywood on there while you're trying to drill it. We've got the elevator bolts out of the bolt kit. They're 1.25 inches with the nuts, 1/4 inch nuts. And we have a square to check the frame and make sure we're square. A hammer for driving the elevator bolts in. Then we have a drill with a 1/4 inch drill bit. This is an air drill I'll be using. You can also use an electric drill, any kind of a drill. Cordless drill works great. And we have a ratchet for tightening our nuts on our elevator bolts. I'll be using an air wrench also, makes it a little bit faster. So we put one piece of plywood into the back corner already. We cut it. We measure from the top, from the bottom to the top. And I had a measurement of 83.5 inches, so I made it 83. That gives me a little room for everything to move, and it still fits tight. So I have about a 1/2 inch gap. Now I've clamped it in here with one of the vice grip clamps. You can see how they work. And I've already put elevator bolts, 2 of them in the bottom, to help hold it in place. When you look at the side, you see that we're tight down in the corner against the side wall. As we go up, we're getting a wide gap. At the top, it's like 1 inch wide. So that tells us that our frame isn't square. And if we put the square on it in the bottom, we can see the same thing. So what we need to do before we put this first piece of plywood in is get the frame square. As soon as we put the plywood in and it's bolted, it'll be rigid and we won't be able to move the frame anymore. Right now we can move it fairly easy. So what I'll do is I'll put one hand on it on the outside, and I'll be able to pull it over when I loosen my clamp and get it where it needs to be, and then tighten my clamp, and we'll see if the plywood should hold it there. I'll loosen my clamp up here, take it off. Now I'll reach over and I'll pull the frame towards the plywood so it's the same as it is on the bottom. That's about right. And I'll reach up with my clamp on it. Let go. It looks pretty uniform. We'll check it. They're square. See that we're good. Square at the top. Bottom is square. So now we'll be able to drill all of our holes and put our elevator bolts in, and that'll stiffen it right up, and that'll hold that wall of the shed. We'll be able to continue on. Okay, here we are showing how to drill the hole for the elevator bolt. We drill through the steel angle iron on the frame with our 1/4 inch drill all the way through the plywood behind it. Once we have a hole all the way through, then we go on the other side of the wall, and the hole that we just drilled, we're going to put the elevator bolt in it. You'll notice it doesn't fit all the way in yet, so we have to take a hammer and drive it in that next 1/4 inch. Then we can go back on the other side put our nut on it. And then we'll tighten it up with our wrench. As you tighten it up, it'll pull the head of it so it's flush on the other side. We'll take our clamp off now. And you can see the bolt is nice and flush. And we'll do the rest for the rest of these all the way across here. There's something else in the corner here that you need to be aware of. The bolts that hold the side strap on protrude into the angle iron, and you want your wood up tight against the corner. You have to notch it out a little bit for the bolt that's behind here, so it'll fit flush. If you don't have your plywood go all the way into the corner or fairly close, you'll have trouble with this other hole out here in this flat strap. You'll have this hole will be covered up by the plywood. So make sure that your plywood is far enough in, and you'll have the other hole here for this sheet. Okay, we've got our plywood on the back wall now. We used 2 full sheets of plywood, and we had to cut another one, a 2-foot piece for the corner. I wanted to point out the bolt holes on this shed. Since it's a 10-footer, there's 2 holes in the middle of each sheet here, and you only need 1 bolt. The reason for 2 holes is if you start from the other end with a 4-foot sheet, you'll have a seam here, a joint, and you'll need 2 holes. So you only use 1 hole in the middle of the sheet. You'll have 3 bolts on the top, and you'll have 3 in the middle, and 3 on the bottom on a full sheet. And then the 2-foot piece that you cut, it was actually 22.5 inches, I believe. You'll have 2 bolts at each layer, 2 on the top, 2 in the middle, and 2 down at the bottom. Here's a detail, a little better, showing how we notched it out for the strap bolt, so we can get at that nut later if we needed to. And the inside, you can see they're all flush, so it's nice and smooth for a horse to be inside without hitting anything. Now we'll go ahead and do our sidewalls the same way. See if our first piece will be square. We'll find out like we did on the back wall here. Okay, we've got all the wood on the shed kit now. We put a piece across the top on the header. The piece that you cut off of the back wall can be used for the front, the header on top. Before we go any further, we tighten up all the frame kit bolts. We tighten all the 3/8 bolts, holding all the rafters and the corners, and that should stiffen your shed right up. You can see where we notched out the corners for the bolts. We did the same up in the front corner here. The bolt kit has some extra long bolts, elevator bolts. There's 6 of them in there. They go right here in this strap on the corners. Because the strap sticks out a little bit, it's too hard to get a nut started. So one would go there, and one would go here on each corner. That's where you get the 6 bolts. This one needs to be tightened up still. So our next step is to put the roof tent sheeting on. We're starting to put the tin on top of our shed. We put one piece up there on top, you can see now. And before we screw it down, we want to make sure the shed is square so the roof will fit on there right. So we've got the edge, you can see it is flush with the angle iron. If it's not square, you'll notice it'll stick out on one side more than the other. It'll be like a pie-shaped piece. And our outside edge is good. It's right on the edge. So we're pretty square right now. Our back, we have it sticking over just a little bit. This is where you'll see if you're off, you'll have more on one end than the other. So if you're not square, it's easy to square it up now. And what we do is we take a bar or a 2x4 and you get under a front corner like this, and you can pry your shed over a little bit, whichever direction you need to go, one way or the other. A 3-foot 2x4 might work. I have a nice bar that I use here, and it's real easy to pick it up and move it over back and forth until your roofing is nice and square and lines up with all the edges. Once you got it square, then you're ready to start putting one down. You do one at a time, and you'll be able to use a ladder inside and reach over to get all the screws without climbing up on top of the roof. So we'll get our screws and our drills ready and start putting the roof on. Okay, we're getting ready to put our tin on, our roof. This is where we have our ladder inside so we can do one sheet at a time. Okay, to do our roof, we're doing 3 screws in each sheet. We have started in the upper corner, front corner, and we have one in the middle. We're going to do another screw on this end, but we're going to wait until we put our next sheet on. It's going to overlap right here, and we'll do both of them with one screw. Now where the roof rafters are, the 2-inch tubing is where we're going to put our row of screws all the way across, 3 in each sheet. On the edge, where we first start on the outside edge, we're going to go in between those instead. We're not going to go right where the tubing is. Our tubing is right here, but if you look, we have our angle piece out here too. We'd be trying to drill through 2 pieces. It would make it a lot harder, so we're going to put our outside ones halfway in between the tubings instead. So we've already done that. Our next step is to do the one in the middle before we put our next sheet on. To do that, we have a straight edge that we can use to help show where the tubing is out here, so we know that we'll drill right here. To do this, a pilot drill, which is a real small drill bit, which is what I have in my air drill here, helps. Our screws are self-tapping screws, but the problem is our steel is so heavy and thick that it's too much for it to self-tap through it. So we have to drill a hole the right size for the screw to go in there. But it's nice to have the heavy steel so we have a nice strong shed. So I use 2 drills. I use a pilot drill, which is a real small drill, half the size of the one we want to use. For the screw is a 15/16. I've got it in a cordless drill here. It works good. It helps if you have more drills. I'm using 3 here. One for my small pilot hole, one for my 15/16 for the screw, and then I have another drill that I use with a nut driver on it to drive the screw in. Then I don't have to keep changing drill bits. You can do it with one drill if you want, if that's all you have. When you get a small pilot hole bit, drill bit. It's good to buy more than one. You know, buy a half dozen of them in case you break one or they get dull on you. You can get a couple of the 15/64 also. So we'll go ahead and drill our pilot hole first for the centerpiece here. So looks like it's right there. Get our air drill. Okay, we've got our pilot hole in there. We can use our other drill, our cordless drill. And we'll put our screw in there. Go too tight, it starts to wrinkle the tin. You know, if you really try too hard, it's not good. The secret to doing the drilling is to be up a lot higher so you're pushing down, you're in good position. If you're down too low and you're reaching up trying to drill down, it's a lot harder and it'll take you longer. So try and get up high on your ladder so you're in a good position when you drill into it. Straight edge on, so we know where to drill at. Looks like right there is where we want to drill. Pilot hole. Get our other drill out. Change my air hose here. Okay, there's those two. Now we'll move our ladder over and we'll do one more in this roof tubing. Then we'll be ready for the next sheet. Here we are with the completed shed. We've got the roof on now. Put all the sheeting on, all of our screws are in. We had to overlap a little extra on the end so it would line up right. Here's a look at the screws in between the rafters on the edge, that outside edge where we didn't go right over the tubing. The roof screws, to drill the hole for it, is 15/64. That's the size of the drill bit. Earlier I said it was 15/16. I was wrong. It's 15/64. And the nut driver to fit the nut on the top of the roof screw is a 3/8. So that should complete our shed kit. We've got 2 hours putting the steel frame together, 6 hours cutting and putting the plywood on, and we have about 4 hours putting the roof tin on. So that's a total of 12 hours for one person. So with 2 people, one good day, you should be able to put it together, 8 hours I suppose. That gives you an idea how long it should take to do it. This is the end of our video for assembling the shed kit from GreenDiamondFabricating.com.